School lunch challenge day 6. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna turn this into a Dutch apple cheesecake. I'm gonna set aside my ingredients and I'm gonna start on my crust. So I'm gonna start on the crust. I'm gonna use a mason jar today just so that you can see the layers when they're done, but you can go ahead and just use a standard mug. And I'm gonna melt down a half of a tablespoon, which I've already measured, of butter in the microwave for 30 seconds. So I have my butter from the microwave that's melted. It took a little less than 30 seconds, so it does depend on the power of your microwave. And I'm gonna take my whole grain bagel and make this into my crust. So I'm gonna take my box grater and very carefully, I'm gonna go ahead and grate this into a crumb. May seem quite fine. I have the finest side of the box grater and you can see it looks like breadcrumbs, which is what we're making, okay? You could just chop this up on the finer side and put it into the mug, or you can cut pieces and lay it in the mug and pour the butter over the top of it. But this is gonna help get it compact. That was my dog in the background, but he is not in the kitchen. Okay, it's gonna help to really push this down. So it's about half of the bagel. Your bagel might smush apart because it's already cut in half, so it makes it a little bit harder to grate, but you can save those pieces after. And I'm gonna go ahead and take the half of my bagel. I'm gonna measure it so that I get the right amount. So 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, and I was hoping for 3 tablespoons, so I'm gonna go ahead and grate a little more. So I've got that second tablespoon and set that aside and continue grating. Now, a little bit more. You can still utilize the bread scraps. You can dry out the bread scraps. It makes it easier to grate on the box grater. Be very mindful of your hands. You don't want to come too close to the smaller holes and openings. If you're concerned, you can have a parent do this for you. And we get our final tablespoons. We get 3 tablespoons, our final tablespoon of the crumb. So we have 3 tablespoons right here. And to that, I'm gonna add just a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon to give a little bit of flavor to the crust. And I'm gonna go ahead and mix that all up into my butter mixture. So it'll be moistened. Okay, and it should be wet enough to go ahead and press down flat. We want it to be pressed flat so it becomes a cheesecake. Pushing that right down, and I'm gonna set it aside so as it sits, it'll continue to moisten in the bottom of the jar or your mug or a bowl or a dish, as long as it's microwave safe. So we're doing this in the microwave again. Okay, so I have a layer right there. I'm gonna set that aside and move on to my Dutch apple filling. So for my Dutch apple filling, I'm gonna use 1 apple that came with the lunch today, and I'm gonna go ahead and peel that. Okay, taking the skin off. We don't want the skin in here. We want to have an apple filling. The skin will not break down at the same rate as the apple. So we wanna just get rid of that. Okay, so I got rid of all of my skin, and I'm just gonna set that aside. I am gonna be making the filling separate in a bowl. It's gonna set aside and cool after we make it, and it's gonna go on top. So it'll look prettier when it's done. So this time you do have to make 2 bowls dirty. So I have my apple. We are gonna be adding some raisins and juice to it, but I'll set that aside. I have my apple, I'm gonna cut it. For my students, they have their chef knives, so they're learning how to use their chef knives, holding it, making sure that they get a firm grip. What we call the claw method, where we have a secure grip on the fruit, turning it, okay, getting our apple cut and going down along the core. So we're gonna discard the core, get rid of the core, and then we've got our apple pieces. So we never wanna cut where it's not stable to the board. So we're gonna go ahead and turn those over and just make a dice. So keep my fingers curled, okay, and just a small dice. So before I add in the apples, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. If you don't have brown sugar, you can use white. It just won't be quite as sweet, which is okay. And then I'm gonna take a teaspoon measure and I'm gonna add in 1 teaspoon of flour, 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, and I'm gonna stir this all up. So I just wanna break it apart. That'll help make sure that everything is combined before I add the apples, which are wet, and they might lump the mixture up. So I wanna blend in that brown sugar, flour, and cinnamon together before I toss my apples in it. So at this point, I'm gonna add in my apples, my whole apple. I'm gonna take and add in a 1/2 box of the raisins. Okay, now don't say ooh, because raisins are really good for you and they're gonna soften up. Welcome to my new puppy. Winston is barking. So about 1/2 of the box of raisins, and that's what makes it Dutched. And if you don't want the raisins in it, then it's fine. You just have an apple filling. And I'm gonna take some of my apple juice from my breakfast this morning. So my apple juice from the breakfast this morning, and I'm gonna go ahead and add in 1 tablespoon of apple juice. That'll give it moisture when it cooks in the microwave. I'm gonna toss everything around, make sure that those apples get coated. And we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna put this in the microwave for 1 minute and see how our filling comes out. See if our apples are tender when we take a fork into them. All right, so this came out of the microwave and it was 1 minute. So we definitely have an apple filling started, but I feel like my filling is a little thick and my apples are still a little bit more firm than I would like them to be. I want them to be a little bit softer. So I'm gonna go ahead and add in another tablespoon of apple juice and stir that around and go ahead and put that back in for another minute. Okay, and you can see those raisins are plumping up. They'll continue to plump up. They're gonna be fantastic in this. Okay, so this is much more like an apple pie filling. You can see it got nice and gooey for the filling. The apples have softened. And we're gonna set this aside. And if you can see the steam coming off, it's really hot. So we're gonna set it aside until we are ready to top our cheesecake. So now we're gonna take another bowl so that we can make our cheesecake filling. So I was given 2 containers of cream. You want it to soften so that we can blend it in without the aid of a mixer. And I've got 2 small 3/4 of an ounce container of cream cheese. I'm gonna go ahead and add in 1 tablespoon of granulated sugar. I'm gonna take some of my Trix yogurt. This is kind of funny, my puppy is animated now. So he's really moving and grooving over there. I don't know what he's doing, but he's talking to you. So at the end of this video, I'll post a little picture. So I have 1 tablespoon of yogurt that we're gonna add in, and it's strawberry banana flavored yogurt, but I'm looking for the yogurt for the body, so it doesn't really matter. In this case, it's gonna turn it a pretty pink. And this cream cheese and yogurt, I'm gonna add to that a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, and a teaspoon of flour, because I do want this to be able to set up. So a teaspoon of flour. Mix that all together. And really try to get that smooth. So if your cream cheese is nice and soft, when you do this, it should smooth out so you don't have any lumps. You could take a small whisk if you need to, but I'm just gonna use my spatula and just keep mushing it until it goes ahead and gets smooth. And then the final thing I am gonna add an egg, because cheesecake is also a type of custard, but we want it to be creamy, we want it to have some body. It'll be a little different than the cheesecake you think of because you're doing it in the microwave, okay? But it's nice and smooth, so now I can go ahead and add my egg. You never know if you're gonna get some of the shell in and you wanna pull that out beforehand. Okay, my waist. And I'm gonna go ahead and break apart the yolk as I'm adding that in. So it'll get nice and creamy. So I've got all my ingredients in for my cheesecake. I need to get that mixed really smooth and well so that it's a pourable batter. And I'll be putting that on top of my crust into the microwave. Okay, so you can see I'm really getting that mixed around. Now the thing with the microwave, because we are using a microwave and we're not putting it in the oven, we're not putting it in water, we're going to have to microwave it for a minute, but every 15 seconds, we're gonna have to open the door and just let the microwave stop and check it. Okay, so that's pulsing or creating intervals. And that allows the cheesecake to not bubble and actually start boiling and splitting apart. It's gonna help to keep it smooth. So that's what we wanna do. And we're gonna pour that right in. We're gonna start with 15-second intervals, but we'll set the microwave for 1 minute. Scrape your bowl really well. Don't eat your cheesecake batter with the raw egg in it. Okay, so that's gonna go into the microwave and we're gonna set that up on 15-second intervals. All right, so I took 1 minute. It's still a little bit soft set inside. And the cheesecake is done. I did it on intervals, okay? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my apple filling that I made, and I'm also gonna use some yogurt, because another characteristic of a Dutch apple dessert is that it would have yogurt in the filling, but we're gonna just layer it to make it look really pretty. So we're gonna take 2 tablespoons of the yogurt and just place that right in on top. And you can see here that it has a nice pretty layer. And then we're gonna go ahead and take some of our apple pie filling that's cooled down. We don't want it bubbling hot because we do have dairy here. And make sure that it's mixed so that the raisins are distributed. We're gonna go ahead and pour. You can use your tablespoon measure for this, but we're just gonna top it off. You'll have extra, so you can go ahead and save that. Now here is the worst part. You have to put this in the refrigerator for a half an hour or more so it gets super cold. Cheesecake doesn't really taste like cheesecake until it has set up. So can't eat it right now. You're gonna have to wait. We'll see what it looks like in a half an hour. Okay, so we have waited a half an hour for the cheesecake to set up. And look at this, we've got the bagel bottom with the bagel that was shredded with butter and cinnamon. We've got our cheesecake mixture. We layered that with some pretty pink yogurt that was left over, but it can be any kind of yogurt. And then our homemade Dutch apple pie filling on the top. So if you go ahead and you dig right down in, okay, and get all of that creamy deliciousness. School lunch challenge accepted.